Our scripture reading today comes from Nehemiah chapter 5, verses 2 through 9. In this passage, the poor are crying out to Nehemiah. Some are saying, "We and our sons and daughters are numerous. In order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain." Others were saying, "We are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine." Still others were saying, "We have had to borrow money to pay the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. Although we are of the same flesh and blood as our fellow Jews, and though our children are as good as theirs, yet we have to subject our sons and daughters to slavery. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we are powerless because our fields and vineyards belong to others." When I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind and then accused the nobles and officials. I told them, "You are charging your own people interest." So I called together a large meeting to deal with them and said, "As far as possible, we have bought back our fellow Jews who were sold to the Gentiles. Now you are selling your own people, only for them to be sold back to us." They kept quiet because they could find nothing to say. So I continued, "What you are doing is not right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies?" This is the word of the God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Amen. Thank you, Karen. This is our last week of our series. The last week where we look at renovation. A couple weeks ago we looked at Ezra, and Ezra was an interesting guy because he came back and he rebuilt the altar and he rebuilt the temple. And in that time, this is what we're doing here, is we are rebuilding or renovating our own church. Then we looked at spiritual renewal. Ezra called on the people and asked for people to have forgiveness and asked people to renew their hearts and their minds for God. And we talked a little bit about spiritual renewal. Then last week we opened up Nehemiah. And Nehemiah wept. He was brokenhearted because the community back in Jerusalem was destroyed. People were living in ruins. The walls were crumbled down. So he went back and he helped people rebuild the walls so that they have a safe community. And everything seemed to be working fine for a while until we get into this chapter 5 where a famine has occurred. And in the famine, some people are doing okay. Some businesses are running okay and it's fine, and some people are thriving. And then other people that are working are falling farther and farther behind. They either have big families, can't find enough grain for the big family, or perhaps they have mortgaged their vineyards or their fields, so now they're overly indebted and now they can't pay their debts. And then others have other problems where the interest is too much, or whatever is going on, they are having trouble keeping their heads above water. And we have this same issue today. We have the working poor. We have people in our community which live amongst us that don't have enough food, that don't have enough resources to be able to live. And what Nehemiah is saying is, this isn't right. Take a look at this cartoon. I don't know, something's not right. So the cat's by the fire hydrant and the dogs are looking at him like, what? This is not right. And Nehemiah is basically saying this, is it doesn't look right. God called us to take care of each other. And that's not what they were doing during this time. So if we take a look at today, we also are called to take care of each other. I'd like to invite Casey up. Casey is the principal at Sharonville Elementary School. And you can just change the slides over to Casey's slide if you don't mind. So she's going to tell you a little bit about Sharonville Elementary and some of the families there.
Good morning. In between services, I was here at the 2 earlier services this morning. I received a text message from my mother, and my mother said, "Where are you? I thought you were coming to church this morning." And I said, "Mom, I'm at church." She said, "I don't see you." And I had to remind her I was coming here today, but then the very next text message that I received was from my home church. I am a member at Lincoln Heights Missionary Baptist Church, and Dr. Elliot Cuff sends his greetings this morning to you all. So as Pastor Ann said, I am Casey Jordan, and I am the principal down the hill at Sharonville Elementary School. It's a cute little school. We service children from grades kindergarten through 5th. My enrollment, I just took a look at that when I was in the office earlier this week, and we're back up again to about 485 students. It's getting a little big, but we love them all and we're excited about it. One of the interesting pieces about my school that many don't realize is that my student population, within my student population, I have over 22 spoken languages in my building. Languages, some that I can't spell, I may not even be able to pronounce. And so if you can imagine some of the challenges that come with that, we are a total English immersion program. We are not dually teaching children in their native language and in English. They are totally submerged in English learning. And so this presents some challenges for my children. And what problems come with that is that as we're trying to teach them to read, of course, that comes with a lot of practice. Kids need to go home and practice what they've learned during the day. Well, we've learned that many of our children are going home to homes where their parents are illiterate, even in their native language. And so my children don't have good English-speaking models at home. They don't have an opportunity to hear good reading. So when you're learning how to read, you need to learn how to articulate it and be fluent in your reading, but you also need to hear it. And so our children are not able to go home to have those good reading models. And so we are always looking for what we call our readers or listeners to support our kids as they move through their reading instruction. I'm really excited, though, because a few years back, the salutatorian for Princeton High School was a former Sharonville graduate. A former Sharonville graduate who came to Sharonville speaking 0 English. So we know the work that we're doing is good work. It's just a slow process, and it often is a process that takes several hands and a lot of additional help. So that is one caveat that we deal with at Sharonville that makes us very special. The other piece, as Pastor Ann mentioned, is that I do have families that come from the working poor. Again, it's a very cute school that you see down the hill. We have manicured lawns and things like that. But when you walk into my doors, over 75% of my children qualify for free and reduced lunch. So by government guidelines, that means those families are living in poverty. And so one of the things that I do to try to combat that is that I feed my children as much and as often as I can, because I am a believer a hungry child cannot learn. I know I'm cranky when I'm hungry. And so my staff understands that when a child tells me they're hungry, that's a no questions asked kind of thing. We give the child something to eat. So you, at any point in time, will come in my office. You'll see oatmeal, granola bars, cereal, macaroni and cheese cups that can go in the microwave, all those kinds of things, because we like to make sure that we have resources available to support the children when their stomachs are growling and they're just not feeling their best. I've been very fortunate to have a partnership with the city of Sharonville, and they come in and they supply me with food, because it started off with either myself or my teachers just throwing in an extra box of granola bars or something like that in our own regular family shopping. And so the city of Sharonville has been a great blessing to us by bringing in some of the non-perishable food items that I can keep to supply to my students. And so again, with the children coming from the working poor, at my school we have a universal breakfast program, and so I'm feeding children breakfast, but I'm also feeding them lunch. Well, those are 2 meals that the children may not get when they go home on the weekends. And so sometimes after my kids have lunch on a Friday afternoon, they don't get anything until I see them again Monday morning at 9 a.m. And so I decided to send home power packs, is what I've named them, where I have a pack of kid-friendly kind of food, things that they can make if their parents are away, if the parents happen to be working, things that they can quickly throw in the microwave. And I just take that power pack and I put it in a child's backpack so that they'll have some things to eat, hopefully to hold them over a little bit until they get back to me on Monday morning. I will tell you, my staff was a little nervous when I decided to do that because they were worried about offending someone. And I said, well, I don't have any worries at all because my heart and my intentions are in the right place. And I have yet to receive any negative feedback from any family that has received a power pack home on the weekends. And so I have been able over the past few years to maybe support about 10 to 12 students on Fridays where I'm putting power packs in their backpacks. And again, the kids just show up and they bring me their backpack, we drop it in, and they skip on off like there's never any conversation about it. Kids don't even ask why they were even selected to get the power pack. They're just happy to have it. And so I've been able to service about 10 or 12 students over the past 2 years. And so when Pastor Ann came on board, she reached out to me this summer, and we've had some conversations about possibly growing that program. And I am so very excited to partner with you all because, again, we are a neighbor to you. We're just down the hill, and I will welcome any of you to come and visit my school. While there are 8 elementary buildings in the Princeton district, I am a believer that I have the best and the brightest kids at Sharonville Elementary. They are amazing. And I say, as I talk about the challenges that the children have and some of the circumstances that they come from, I'm also very careful to share they are not the downtrodden. These are hardworking children. These are humble children. These are children who are coming from families who are so appreciative for the help and the support that they received. My favorite is when a parent told me one time she did not know and didn't believe that someone who wasn't even related to her child would love and care for her child so much. So the kids are amazing. They are remarkable. You are more than welcome to come down and visit at any point in time. But I tell you, if you walk through my front doors, you're going to fall in love, so be careful. Come when you have a moment to spend with us. It is a great place, and the kids are amazing. So thank you again for extending the invitation. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Casey, we so appreciate you being here all morning at all 3 services to share with us about the school. In your bulletin is a paper that looks like this. It is read, there are 3 opportunities with the school that we have that we can serve them. First is we will begin tutoring in October, the first week of October, on Tuesdays from 4:15 to 5:15, just for an hour. 1 hour a week makes a huge difference in kids' lives. These are kids that have the ability to read. They just don't have the home support for them to be able to do it. So 1 hour a week makes a huge difference. If we can get these children reading at grade level by grade 4, then it's exponential that they would be able to graduate from high school, the probability. So we are just thrilled that we can make sure that we end their poverty cycle by getting them educated. And with connection to a program like this, they see different role models, and they often go on to higher education opportunities, that type of thing, as they graduate. Now, also the power packs, we're hoping we can increase those power packs to 40, 50, or 60 power packs a week. It's not unusual for schools with that level of reduced and free lunch that many kids need something to eat on the weekend. And this is an easy one for us to do. We're partnering with Christmas Fund program. It's part of the city of Sharonville. There's a small group of people, and they work the food pantry. They actually manage the food pantry down on the fire station by Chester Road. So they are willing to help fund some of the food that we need. We'll probably ask for some donations, but most of the donations or most of the food will actually come from them. We just need people to pack that. So if you sign up, we'll work on packing when you're available. We don't have to do it at a certain day or time. It's something we can do in the church and then just deliver them on Friday to the school. And then the mobile food pantry is an extension of the food pantry in Sharonville, and they need some of us a couple people to drive it, but some of us just to ride in there and welcome people in the neighborhood and actually hand out food in neighborhoods where they need food. So you can sign up outside the 2 double doors there. There's a table and there's sign-up sheets. You can sign up for any one of these. We already have about 10 tutors, but I would like to get us to about 20 tutors if we can. So if you cannot tutor, your job is to find someone who will tutor. How's that? Come on, Marlene. Come on, Melissa. Okay, Marlene, you're the grocery store clerk. And Melissa, you're going to be the daycare person watching the kids. Susan, you're going to be the landlord. I'm going to stand right here. You're the landlord. You didn't volunteer, but you're that. You just hold on to that for a minute. We'll call on you. Yeah, some people just don't, don't volunteer and you get called on. So Diane, come on up. Come on, I need one more person. Diane is a mother of, well, should we say 3 kids?
Oh, sure, I like that.
Okay, 3. She has 3 children, and she's working at McDonald's. She didn't get a lot of money, but she's a faithful employee. She's good at what she does, and I'm the manager at McDonald's. So she worked all week, so I'm going to pay Diane $3. So here's your $3 for working, Diane. And by the way, you owe $1 to daycare and $1 to the landlord, and you need food, so you're going to have to buy some food. So you'll have to give away your dollars because, it costs money to live and you got 3 kids to take care of and you got to buy enough food. So she comes back the next week and she earns $3 and of course it comes in, but it goes back out. It's just the way it is, It just happens to be that, we're living hand to mouth, as you would say. So she comes back the next week and I'm paying her $3, but she has a problem. Her car broke down. And Chris is a mechanic and he's willing to work on her car, but it costs $1. Now, I know, now you have $3, but 4 people, 4 things you need to allocate. Which one? Let's see. You could fall behind in, right?
Children.
Yeah, she's going to guilt you into paying for daycare. So you can't really get away with not doing daycare, and maybe you need food, and if you don't fix your auto, you're not going to be able to get to work, right? You can't work if your kids aren't taken care of. So good thing we have a mobile food pantry, because the mobile food pantry comes into your neighborhood, and they came up and delivered food for you and your kids. So now you have food for the week, and now you can have enough money to give to your auto mechanic, your landlord, and your daycare, and you don't need to go to the grocery store. So and she can't make it to the food pantry, right? Because her car's broken down. I mean, that's just the way it is. Or maybe she doesn't have 2 cars and her husband has the car, so she can't go at that time. It doesn't have to be an auto mechanic. It could be that there was an extra medical bill or some other problem in the family where she needed money. But when she's living hand to mouth on a small salary and has kids, she's going to eventually have a problem, right? There's just eventually it's going to be the way it is. Thank you guys for helping out. Sure, you can keep your dollars. So it doesn't have to be one thing. Sometimes it's just multiple things that happen to the working poor. So lots of times we think of the poor as somebody that's not working, that's maybe not trying to pull their weight, but really often, we have people that are working and they just can't get ahead. And if you have have children, it's hard to go to school and work. It just becomes complicated, and they really need a lot more support. So in our ways of giving back, whether it's the food pantry, the mobile food pantry, or helping with the power packs, or helping with tutoring, and the tutoring program is designed to lift somebody up out of poverty. When we walk alongside a student and they learn to read so that they don't drop out of high school, we impact them. I'll tell you, I usually do the story at the end, but I'm bringing it in right here because in my time in serving in the various churches that I've been, I ran into one person in particular. We had this group that came up to me, and it was a small group of women, and they said they wanted to do a food program. They had power packs. They were delivering 80 packs on the weekends during the school year. But what happened is the school came to us and said, hey, these kids are going all summer without food or with limited food resources. So we, this small group, put together this program where we delivered food for the 9 weeks that they were out. Once a week, they went to the trailer parks and the apartments, and then the people came to the front parts of theirs and picked up a whole packet of food that would last for the week for each child that we were serving. And so I'm meeting with the women one day, and the woman says, you know, I want to tell you why this story is so important to me. And she looks at me, and this is, she could have been sitting in our sanctuary today. I mean, she's married, has 2 kids, brings her kids to the Sunday school program. They're affluent. They're just really thriving family in the community. And she looks at me and she says, when I was young, I was one of 9 children, and we were really, really poor. And there were these church ladies. These church ladies came to our house every week and brought us a couple bags of food. This is a real life person standing there talking to me and saying, we would not have ate if it wasn't for those church ladies bringing us food. And so she's inspiring her whole group, small group, to do these power packs and to help out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, sometimes we give and we're like, aren't they going to do something different? Won't they come to church or do, you know, why don't they solve their problem? Well, that family never solved the poverty issue during her day. But the seeds that those church ladies, that they planted were incredible, right? They just blossomed into a family that was now Christian and that raised their children Christian and could work and to thrive in a community. So I share that story with you because so often we think, oh, somebody else can take care of it. But if each of us do something, if each of us, donate 30 minutes of our time, right, and give back in one way or another, if each of us do it, we really can have an impact on our little community and our working poor and perhaps somebody that might be even temporarily unemployed. So it's a special story for me, and it generates for me a sense of compassion. And when I say that, when I use the word compassion, I mean, when you look at Nehemiah just cared about people, right? He just cared. He cared about the people that were unsafe, so he went back to build the wall. He cared about the poor that didn't have enough to eat or that were getting so far in debt that they couldn't survive. Matter of fact, it's not even that he just cared about it. He cried out to other people and said, this isn't right. This isn't right. We have to do something. We have to help them. We're called by God. And basically what he said is, we're called by God. You're going to have to answer to God. You need to step forward. And so he encourages people. But Jesus also has compassion. If we look in Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 to 14, it says, when Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. He had compassion. He cared about them. I mean, Jesus never, ever asked somebody to do something first and then gave them something. He always gave love, grace, and provision first. He goes on in this story to feed 5,000, and then later on he feeds another 4,000. And then in chapter 15, in Matthew chapter 15, verse 32, it says, Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way. Or we might say hangry, I think is what we say sometimes, is so that we're not sending someone away hungry. You know, I think, sometimes I have to admit, I take for granted that I have enough food to go to the grocery store and I can buy food and feed my kids and feed people in the neighborhood and all the things that we do. So there are lots of people in the school, in the Sharonville Elementary School, that need our help. I would encourage you to sign up, and then I'll leave you with this one last story about starting small. So there was this, in 1992, there was a couple, Jeff and Christy Leland. And Jeff and Christy moved to Seattle, Washington because of Jeff's job. He was going to be a teacher, and it was late in the year. They hired him in the latter part of the school year. So he moves there with his family, and he has 2 children, and his young son, Michael, the baby, ends up being diagnosed with cancer within like a few weeks. And so the doctors say that he needs a bone marrow transplant, but during this time, the insurance would not pay for it until he was working for a certain amount of time. So the good news is Amy, his sister, 6 or 7-year-old sister, has a match on the bone marrow. So they have a match. They just have a financial issue now because the insurance won't pay for it, and it costs about $200,000. So it happened that Mr. Kennedy, one of the other teachers, was telling the kids about it in his classroom. And a 7th grader, Damien, who's a special education needs kind of a young man, goes home and has 12 $5 bills saved up. He takes his 12 $5 bills, which is $60, and he goes over to Christy and Jeff's house, and he hands it to them and says, here, you can have my money because I heard you needed money for your operation, for your baby. And they were touched. And they took his money and they thanked him for it, but they went back to school and told some people about it and told how much they appreciated his heart, and just was a great story to tell. Well, that spurred on the entire school going out and doing walkathons, bake sales, other ways to earn money. They went all out to earn money, and in that, the paper got a hold of it, and they wrote up a story. And they got a $10,000 check from a person that had read the paper. So now, in the first week, they have $16,000. They're like, oh my goodness, I can't even believe that we ended up with $16,000, but far, far short of what they need. So it ends up that the TV guy, a part of the school, he starts a special on it, and they start to advertise it on the TV. Within 3 weeks, they raised $220,000 for this operation. All because one 7th grader who had no idea how to raise $200,000 stepped up and gave first. Right? Just because one person stepped up. So all my point is small things matter. Small things that we do, the 15 minutes it took for the church ladies to go deliver food to that family of 11, may not have been very much time. They probably don't even realize the impact they had. But what impact they did have was huge. Our challenge is to go out and do what we can. We're not asking everybody to do things that they can't do. We're just asking that everybody who can do a little, because many hands make light work. Nehemiah cried out, "This isn't right. Some of us should not be thriving and living in abundance while others can't eat or don't have enough food to eat." So we have to cry out too. Jesus taught us we need to go. Go and serve the poor, go and serve the working poor, whether it's with food or tutoring or education or even with IHN, as we ended up ending our IHN service this week and housing the homeless. Jesus calls all of us. I just hope that you will put something out of your heart this week. God will move you. God will spur you on to do something that he is calling you specifically to do. Won't you pray with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you because it's a privilege to do your work in this world. It's a privilege to come here and hear your word, and it's a privilege to serve others in our community. Lord, we thank you for the abundance, for the money from Christmas Fund Program, from the donations that we have here and the people that go and serve. Lord, we are thankful. Encourage us, inspire us to do more and more, and may you multiply our service as we go out to proclaim your name. We lift this up in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.